Hey guys, welcome back to the Cult of Film. We're going to keep rolling on the Dune content. We've covered the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune, which is currently streaming on Max, formerly HBO Max. We reviewed the 1984 David Lynch adaptation of Dune, which is still one of my favorite movies of all time. I've watched it about 10 times, and that is a hill I will die on. I do think it's a great film. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's a uniquely visionary work that was absolutely wrongfully maligned from the time it premiered. Maybe to this day, there seems to be a bit of a reevaluation of the criticism of it, which is good, but it needs to be Blade Runner 82 level reevaluation, in my opinion. But today, we're moving on to the new film adaptations by Denis Villeneuve. We're doing Dune Part 1. And I went into Dune Part 1 much like I did going into Blade Runner 2049, really defensive of the original films or film, and didn't necessarily allow myself the full openness to enjoy it. And I have since rewatched Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, which will be the next video. And I enjoyed it when I saw it in the theater. I really did, but I really, really enjoyed it upon rewatching it just recently. And this has kind of been my relationship with Denis Villeneuve and his films. When things come out, I'm not I don't know, not to say skeptical, but maybe a little more skeptical, and he wins me over every time. And so I think I'm finally starting to relax with his adaptions and or remakes of properties that are near and dear to my heart, because he absolutely knocked it out of the park with Blade Runner 2049. And I feel he has done the same for Dune Parts 1 and 2. For today's review, obviously, we'll do Part 1. And I don't know what more I can say in terms of the story. A lot of you that are watching this are probably nerds like me and are familiar, so I'm not going to retread the plot, but rather I'd like to talk about the film itself. And what I really love about Dune Part 1 is how he really sort of establishes, his own aesthetic. Villeneuve does. But what I found interesting is, having rewatched it in light of Jodorowsky's Dune and what my 10th or 11th rewatch of David Lynch's Dune from '84, seeing little, I don't know if they were necessarily things that Villeneuve consciously kept from Lynch, the Lynch film, or from how much he researched, how deep he delved into Jodorowsky's storyboards for his unrealized film of Dune. But it's certainly there. At the same time, it's entirely Villeneuve's film. Villeneuve does a really great job of noticing. I thought it might have just been for 2049 Blade Runner, but I'm seeing it now in parts of Dune as well. His use of shadow, his use of light, and that really pops up quite a bit in Dune Part 1 as well. I really like the desert aesthetic. When I first watched it in the theater, my fear was that the movie would be too clean. I think a problem that I have with a lot of modern science fiction, and this is not a problem that with Villeneuve, uh, is a lot of current science fiction is too slick and it's too clean. And I think that has a lot to do with the super over reliance or overuse of CGI. We are in such an era of the dominance of video games that I don't think a lot of audiences can see how much video games are influencing feature film. And as someone who's a non-gamer, who is surrounded by gamer friends, gamer family, I sort of sitting on the outside of it, I'm really seeing the video gamization of film. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but the negative I'm seeing is the over polish, the over smoothing out, the almost too perfect aesthetic that particularly sci-fi is getting because of the influence of video games. Dune Part 1 does not fall victim to that at all, because again, Villeneuve, I think, is a genius, and I think he, not to say that other directors don't care, but I feel he is a particularly meticulous director because he did not fall into this trap in Blade Runner 2049, and he certainly didn't fall into it in Dune Part 1, because Dune, especially, I mean, it takes place, in a desert. It does take place even on the other planets like Giedi Prime, which is the home of the Harkonnens or Harkonnens, however you want to pronounce it. Uh, these places look and feel real. Some of the sort of, well, I guess I don't know what you call them, grand marches or um, grand processions you see on Giedi Prime, while they're uniquely designed, the stone of the buildings and the streets that they walk through look used. The There isn't a clean panel really in any of the uniforms or any of the machines that are being used on Arrakis to mine the spice. That level of grit I really appreciate as someone who really came up watching so much practical effects films, whether it be Aliens or it be Terminator or it be, oh gosh, I mean, there's so many, Ghostbusters, so many of these films that did a really great job because of the time they were made and could not over rely on digital effects because of when they were made. And now we have these incredible tools. I think CGI is an amazing tool. I'm not anti CGI at all, but it does seem in some respects it can be over relied on depending on the film or the TV project. And to his credit, Villeneuve doesn't fall prey to that at all, and I really appreciate that. In addition to what I love about Dune Part One is the costume design. Really, the Arabesque slash Islamic design of the buildings, of the ships, certainly of the costumes, like I mentioned, is really just incredibly beautiful. And not this is not a critique of the Dune '84 film, because I think it had just as a incredibly unique, grand execution of the costume designs. I feel that Villeneuve's Dune is a little closer to what is described in the novel uh, than maybe Lynch's is, and I adore Lynch's film, and I know he hates it, but I love it. So that was really cool. The choice of creating a language for Dune. You'll see several inscriptions on buildings or tablets or scrolls, and I now kind of want to learn whatever this language is. I don't know if it's Caledonian or what it is, but it looks really cool. That it's that level of detail uh, that shows me that the people working on this film really cared a lot. So again, obviously beautiful direction, incredible cinematography. It's a stacked cast as well. You have Timothy Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Stephen McKinley. You have Zendaya, Chang Chen, Sharon Duncan Brewster, Jason Momoa, Javier Bardem. Incredible, incredible cast. Music by Hans Zimmer, to me, again, one of the things I like about Hans Zimmer is how he seems to be able to execute perfectly to the project that he is working on. I didn't realize that Hans Zimmer had done the score for Dune Part One, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound like Hans Zimmer. But when you're Hans Zimmer, you can kind of do whatever. The guy has just such mastery of theme and his craft. So that worked really too. I feel like they really leaned into the Arabesque Islamic aesthetic of the film, and so much. For those of you that have read Frank Herbert's novel, he did so much research into obviously Abrahamic religions. If you look at the backstory of, for example, the world of Dune, they read from something called the Orange Catholic Bible. Again, this is 8,000 years from now, 8,000 years into the future. You have a form of Zen Sunni Islam. You have just these really interesting, he's sort of thought forward in terms of how might certain religions evolve or intersect. And that's one of the more fun parts of the novel to me. And I really appreciate that the production of Dune Part One, while it didn't delve too deep into the minutia of the cultural religious uh, work that you have in the novel. Again, read the novel for that. It's a great book. My plan is to reread it, reread several of the books at the end of the year when things calm down. But you can see those effects. You can see how, in some of the, again, the costumes and some of the buildings, some buildings look some like quasi Gothic. A lot of them look very Islamic. There are things that look almost sort of like Roman Catholic. Again, the attention to detail for every corner of the Dune universe that Villeneuve and company have produced is just really pretty, really beautiful. It's as fun to. I find myself, not to say that the script is uninteresting because it is. I'll be sucked into the dialogue and what's going on, and then you'll have sort of a break. We'll have a wide shot of the desert. You'll have a wide shot of a palace. Or you have a wide shot of just space, and you just can sort of meditate on it. It's a very sort of Tarkovsky, almost sort of Tarkovsky meditation on how beautifully composed this movie is and how many moments there's. I don't think there's a single moment where you couldn't pause Dune Part One and just have a beautiful composition on your TV. You could, take a snapshot of almost any scene in the film and have something that would be, something you could hang on your wall, something that's really beautiful, truly awe-inspiring. We use the word awesome to denote anything that's cool or fun, but this film, visually, aesthetically, design-wise, it is truly awesome, truly awe-striking for me. And again, he knocks it out of the park. What more? Uh, what more can I say about this film? If you haven't seen it, you absolutely should. But Dune Part Two is just all of this plus more, and I'm looking forward to the third installment. I think is coming out in 25. I might have that wrong, but the film is how long is it here? It's 155 minutes, which seems long, but to me, like I don't know, I could have watched a 4 hour movie. I could have watched a 4 hour version of this. I do wonder. I look at a film like this, like I have so many films that I love, like the original Dune, like many of Andrei Tarkovsky's works, the works of, I mean, you name it, of the greats, and I wonder. I'm like, oh, I wonder if there's a director's cut coming that would allow me 4 hours or what have you. Uh, because it is that good. It's that beautiful. It's that engaging. A beautiful balance of dialogue and action. I know that well, they say it's so hard to tell. It seems like the marketing or more business side of our business in terms of film wants oh, they want explosions, they want actions, which of course we do. We want those things, and that's part of the story. But I love how the dialogue, the conversations between characters, and so far is as compelling as any of the battles that occur, and the battles are beautiful and fun. The Again, the thing about Dune, which I mentioned this in the previous video on Dune 84, is it's such a unique story. It's so different from the other sort of big sci-fi franchises like Star Trek or Star Wars, in that it really is a cautionary tale about power and the ability to, does power corrupt, the dark side of prophecy, um, you know, very very interesting questions that are put forth that upon maybe a couple of viewings you sort of see how beautifully they layered in these themes from the novels into the film. And again, it's beautiful to look at. Again, it's a stellar cast. It's the acting is flawless. There isn't there's no moment where they attempt to, again, Dune, like I mentioned in the previous video on Dune 84. Dune is the Shakespeare of science fiction. And like Shakespeare, we don't when we perform Shakespeare, when we read Shakespeare, we do not bring Shakespeare down to us. He uses a particularly elevated language, which even at the time he was writing his stuff in the early 1600s, people didn't speak that way. People seem to think, oh yeah, they spoke Shakespearean English in the 1600s. They didn't. That was Shakespeare. That's how he wrote. But when reading and certainly in performing Shakespeare, you have to raise yourself up to Shakespeare. You bring yourself up to Shakespeare. You do not bring Shakespeare down to you. There's an elevation, a demand of Shakespeare. And that's what Dune does. Dune demands that you have some functional knowledge of spirituality, of world religions, of culture, of human history, of the history of war, and so much that, not to say that other science fiction does not demand, but Dune, be it the novel or the films, really demands your undivided attention, and it makes greater demands of your intellect. And I appreciate the fact that Villeneuve and company at no point in these recent films attempted to make it anything less than what it is. There's a strong appreciation and due reverence to the original source material in making these films. There's nothing that feels of the time, and that's something that I feel our industry is really having a difficult time with. So much of what we're making just is it feels like of the time, where we've got to get certain points across for whatever reason, as opposed to seamlessly weaving, if we have a message, seamlessly weaving that into the story and just creating a great piece of art. And these new Dune films, like the Dune 84 film, and certainly what would have been with Jodorowsky's Dune, are elevated. It's complex, sort of high brow. Sorry to say, it's highbrow science fiction. It's that sort of it's a grand drama, that epic, truly epic drama. And I'm so happy that this was made, and that part two was made, and part three is on the way, and that does not seem that Villeneuve is interested in doing anything other than really giving the source material and the work that everyone was tasked with on these productions anything other than an absolutely elevated, high concept sci-fi drama, because that's exactly what we get. And in a time where it's easy to criticize what comes out, we have to understand that there is a market for film. We are in show business, and there is a business part of film. That there is still a very strong corner of show business and of film that does not speak down to us, that demands more of our intellect, demands our attention, the higher part of us, the best of us in terms of our minds, our hearts, and these Dune films are doing that. So check it out. Again, Dune Part 1, my review of Part 2 is coming soon. And yeah, and then hopefully in about another year's time, we'll have part 3. So thanks for watching. Check out Dune Part 1 and 2 are streaming on Max, formerly HBO Max. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share. If there are other films that you'd like us to touch on, I'm all ears. I'm always down for be it cult film, sci-fi, drama, anything particularly interesting. Weird is okay, but it's got to be weird to a point. It still has to have artistic merit to it. And that's weird for the sake of being weird. I can't do that stuff. But thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.